Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. It is December. I am not sure if I'm going to have my last 2 episodes up. I might take a little break there, or I might put them up. I haven't decided, but don't worry if you don't get those last 2 on the end of the month. It is almost the end of the year. We're going to do our prediction episode. I don't know if that will be December or January. Very excited about it. And so and leave me 5 stars wherever you can if you listen to the podcast. That's all my housework out of the way. So today, let me tell you about my guest today. You all have heard me say many, many times how regular therapy is on its way out, that there has to be some energy work, merging some metaphysical, some paranormal. Well, that's exactly what my guest does today. Today, I am talking to Kathleen Oh, who is an integration coach. Kathleen, how are you?
I'm great, Karen. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
And thank you for letting me start again. I screwed up last time, you guys. And Kathleen, you're up in Canada, right?
Yes, I'm actually just on the border to Buffalo, New York, but I live in the Niagara region in Canada.
Just cold enough, right?
Well, we're pretty tropical. We've got a lot of fruit and wine, actually.
Oh, well, that's all you need. That's all you need right there. So now we have so much to talk about because I know you outside of the podcast, but tell us all, what does that term mean, integrational coach? And then we're going to get into how you got there.
Okay. So an integration coach is exactly the thing that most people are missing in their conventional therapy, where they have non-ordinary experiences or things they can't explain, if it's dreams or visions or guides, in their meditations, in their yoga classes, while they're running a marathon, and whatever they're going through in their lives is something that perhaps they don't understand, and they seem to think that it is a unusual circumstance to be talking to a coach about, or a therapist about, but being able to really understand that it's part of their transformation or their process is my superpower.
That's So when you say, and this is very interesting because I think this is how I had a bad experience. So, now, and we're going to go to, first I'm going to go to your awakening, and then we're going to go back to how you help others. Because you've worked in the mental health field and are actually a trained, a positive psychologist. I see some things here that we've written down. You did internal family systems, positive psychology, solution-focused hypnosis, and breathwork exploration, correct?
Yes.
All in one.
Well, it's funny because my career started in social work, and I was working frontline with a lot of adult mood disorders, mental health issues, psychiatric problems, and it was a really fine balance to be able to help people, but also stay well. And that was an interesting thing that they never taught me in college, was how to self-care and how to be able to maintain boundaries and positive mental health in my own work. And so, unfortunately,
that is some hard work.
That is, yes. And unfortunately, that led me to a burnout in my work and in my family and my life. And it was the direct cause for me leaving agency work and public work, because I didn't have the resources available within myself or even in the industry to get support to recover. So that was years ago. That was 15 years ago. But it was something that really directed me to be in this industry where I can not only help myself, but I can help others by helping myself. And it wasn't just through talk therapy or medication, because all of those things I tried and they didn't work.
Yeah. And also the whole topic of self-care, I would like to cover at the end, because I know well, I know so many people that need to hear about that. And also, self-care is not a pedicure, people. That's what my friend Melissa Sonova says. Self-care is not a pedicure. And I was like, I don't do pedicures, but I agree with it completely. So that's where you started, and you actually had a big breakthrough.
Yes, I did. And that's actually an interesting, one of the things that was playing in the back of my mind when you said self-care isn't a pedicure. For me, it also wasn't a glass of wine or 3 at the end of the day. But for the most part, when I did recover that burnout, that was one of the, insert here next addiction problem into my life, because I didn't know. I wasn't directed in that way that recovering mental health problems by adding an addiction was really just going to be another Band-Aid to a solution that I hadn't solved at that point. So this year actually is my 3rd year sober.
Nice.
And I have just owned it. I've just owned that I had an addiction to alcohol. And in the previous 2 years, I would have said I was a food addict. And that felt true because I was obese, and I was also numbing out with food, binge eating, overeating, eating in secret, doing all those things, as well as consuming alcohol. And so I knew there was a problem, but I didn't know that 1, the food was a problem, or 2, the alcohol was a problem, or those 2 in combination were driving me like batshit crazy. So I just really, and thankfully, and I can say this now, and because I'm unaddicted, but thankfully those lessons through my life of being uncertain about why I felt the way I did really motivated me to do better and to find solutions and find answers. And, you listed a number of things that I do: internal family systems, positive psychology, solution-focused coaching. Those things were attempts at me undoing all of that damage in my brain that never stopped.
Right. And when you say positive psychology, I love that term. What does that mean?
So there is a movement. It actually started with a Harvard course called the Happiness Course many years ago. And the reason they started it is because a lot of people in institutions were finding that they were learning academics, but they weren't actually learning the foundations of happiness or the foundations of being able to thrive and be positive. So the Harvard brought in this course, which within 2 semesters became one of the most popular courses at Harvard, and it was taught by Tal Ben-Shahar. And there are many positive psychology pioneers, but he's the one that I'm directly taught through and with. And so, but that course at Harvard was something that inspired many, many people to understand that one of the things that is missed in our life is being taught how to navigate our thoughts, navigate our feelings, be able to have better outcomes rather than just really working hard and a nose to the grindstone and getting ahead in life. There was more to it. So the positive psychology movement started, it was coined in the late 90s. And that course was actually taken out of Harvard and taught publicly for 5 years. And I fortunately was part of the alumni of that course. But the actual premise, a lot of our therapy work is talking about our problems. They're talking about, our past and how many things went wrong in that week. But the positive aspect of our lives is often missed. And if we don't pay attention, if we don't kind of appreciate those things, we don't actually get to check those boxes of being able to honor the things that are going well.
Yes, and it seems to, and it can create this victim identity.
Yeah, and I think, and I have had many years in talk therapy, and it has helped me. but it gave me slow movement and momentum forward. It didn't really give me the footing to say, okay, so if I can focus on these things that are going well and do more of that, and maybe just shift my thinking and my perception into something that feels better instead of like stirring the pot of pain, I can think about and see how I may be able to move that pain over into something that feels less heavy or less consuming. And our brain naturally wants it. We want to feel better. We want to do better. But the unfortunate thing is that we aren't taught.
And that's a great word that you just used, consuming, because it is so easy to fall into, and everyone has been a victim. I don't want to undo that with the meaning of that word, but to live in that identity is where the problem starts.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the unfortunate thing is people don't know that that's part of the problem is staying there. But that there is a solution, which is to come out of it. And for me, that's kind of where I ended up when I fell flat on my face in public service. But then later, as you had asked me to share earlier, was my awakening, because when I became unaddicted, it was scary as shit. It was the scariest thing I've ever been through. And to say to somebody, you're going to get being able to address and really, like the word we're using is integration. So to integrate those experiences from victimhood to being a warrior, or to being your own savior, is like literally ripping off Band-Aids and ripping off those things that I personally did to keep myself safe and sane, even though they didn't feel safe and they felt kind of crazy, but it's all I knew.
Well, it's funny. I love that we're starting this way, because I almost want to go to people, hang on, we're getting to dragons and all kinds of things that really integrate this into the paranormal, which is exactly why I love what we're talking about. It's very interesting. And then I want to get back to how you had your awakening and you lost 100 pounds. There is so much now in feeling that people, because of this sort of ascension or transformation that we're going through now, there are things that 5 years ago would have been completely fulfilling to people. And all of a sudden now they're like, this isn't cutting it. And they don't know why. And that's where I think it's, what you do is a perfect place, is that perfect meeting place to help people through that, because it literally just became part of my practice in my life to say, hey, is that making you happy? Or what is making you happy? I had a friend, we do kind of joke challenges where we write 5 jokes a day and we text them back, and I had to stop it because I was like, you know what? I'm writing 5 crappy jokes and that challenge is not fulfilling me. I want to write one great joke that I love. I know I'm a little off topic, but I think this new sort of vibration with the world is, it's now it's kind of like, it really is driving people to get happy. So tell us about your, you started losing weight, and this is sort of where the transformation started?
Yes. So the weight loss came as, I spent many years in my life, loving and accepting my body no matter what. I wanted to empower myself and empower women and people with weight issues to just really embrace whatever body they were born into, and however that they were able to show up in the world at their best. And so now looking back on it, it was really my attempt to uncover some of my own not good enough feelings, or my own not beautiful feelings, because I didn't fit that norm of Vogue, or what I grew up with was Elle magazine, and Barbies and Wilma Flintstone with tiny little waists. So those kinds of things didn't fit me. I didn't have those things.
Right. And just a note on the magazine covers, those women don't have those things. Those have all been touched up. So just for note to everybody. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly. Although I've spent time in places where I've seen a lot of naked women, and I know we all have our own warts and wobbles. So, but it still felt to me like the way through this life with the body that I was living in was to just accept it no matter what. And because I didn't know what else to do. And this this moment of truth happened when I realized that I was a food addict. And a food addict has a very specific brain, not unlike other addicts, where there's a molecular need, an addiction within the brain that is, for me, was revolving around refined foods. And a secondary to that was alcohol. So when I had that really clear moment of truth that I had that brain and that I needed to recover, I then removed all those foods from my life and followed a very natural, lots of fruits and vegetables and proteins and healthy fats in my life. And this program, literally the weight was dropping off of my body faster than I could even kind of keep up to it. But as well as that, I became incredibly awakened to my surroundings, because what I didn't know for my entire life was that I was intentionally addicted to stay disconnected.
Did you hear that, people? I want everyone to hear that. I want all my empaths out there to hear that, because that is so, yes, that is. And also there is something about your awakening. And Jessa, one day I started throwing things out in my apartment and getting rid of, and I think it was Jessa Reed who said something like, when you are losing trauma or baggage, you get rid of things and weight. So it's all connected.
Yes, it is. I think there's a book, I wish I could quote the author, but I can't, but it's called, Does This Clutter Make My Ass Look Fat? So it's, I don't know anything about the book, but the title is really appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah. And so having this weight dissolving and my brain unaddicted, and now then at that point the connection started happening. And before that, I'm pretty sure we haven't talked about the dragons, but before I became unaddicted, I did have a tribe of dragons. And in retrospect, I'm pretty sure that they were the ones that guided me to that particular moment in that day when I listened to that person that told me about that program, and then from there that everything just unraveled. But they didn't tell me that it was going to be an absolute spiritual shakedown to the point where I did not know how I was going to get through it. And but I did have the dragons.
Yes.
and I did get through it.
And folks, and we are going to do a whole thing on that. Everybody that just went, wait, what? Why do they keep talking about dragons? Because it's part of the work that she does. And also, I was going to go back a step. I did have a friend that died of, she was very, very thin. I didn't realize she had a eating disorder, but she had that. She couldn't stop with the sugar. And, and when she passed away, they found all the sugar wrappers in her car and stuff like that. And, yes, I think it's interesting too, that when you work on your own stuff, no matter what way it is, like I'm working on my shadow side now, the more you know yourself, the more these things and these intuitions come forward. So, so you start losing, the weight is coming off, everything is changing. And I always there's a meme out that shows you think your spiritual awakening looks like this, and it's like a woman in the sun and her arms are open and everything is glorious, and they say, but it really looks like this, and it's the Tower card. It's everything just being disturbed and destruction and just knocking everything down to rebuild. So that probably describes how your awakening was.
Yes. I don't even know if there's words to describe it, Karen. And to be able to be public with it, it's like, but people, it's great. It's really good.
Yeah, get to the other
you
side.
lose all your friends and nobody likes you. But you've got, the other side is so light. Yeah, because, my friends and even my children, they don't know. Nobody knows what's going on. My life was, it felt like a cracked vase. Like it just felt like crumbling pieces every single day. And weird stuff started happening. And you and I've talked a little bit about this, where there was vibrational crystal grids there was a sound, and I never heard that sound before, and I didn't understand what it was there for and what it meant. And the only place that I could go, and this is actually, we've touched down on fairies too, but that I could only go to the woods and the forest and be held by the trees and by the multidimensional beings that were there to feel safe, because the people that I was around had no idea, because I had no words, and they couldn't see and feel what was going on, and they had no understanding.
Right. And you had no understanding probably. So you were just trying to react to these new feelings and whatnot. Now, when you, it's almost like the woods and even what you did with food just put you so back in touch with the vibration of the earth. Do you sense things? Is it clairaudient? Is it clairvisual? Is it a knowing? Because I also talk to trees, and I can't explain that to anyone, except that I say like, hey, how are you doing? And in my head, for every tree, I hear a different voice with a different answer.
Yes. Yes. So I guess it's clairaudient. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't hear words. I hear vibrations. And so that information, my downloads are incredibly cryptic. It feels like an elevator coming into my body. And it starts through my crown chakra, and then just this vibrating sound and energy just takes over. And in some ways, it's kind of helpful, because then I don't have to have these conversations. I can know that whatever it is that's coming in is going to make sense at some point, which it typically does. But I also know oftentimes the dragons actually interpret what is happening in my dreams. So the spiritual awakening with the dragons, and to be honest, like if I could only pay them as much as I pay my therapist, I probably would have, saved some money. But I have this experience with the dragons where all of this weight is coming off, all of these vibrations are happening. I feel kind of crazy and wild in my body and in my life. And at night when I go to sleep, the dragons take me through like training, dragon school, like spiritual.
Great. Okay, that's the perfect place. I'm gonna take a break right here, and then we're gonna talk dragon school, dragon training. I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Okay, folks, we'll be right back. From my podcast series, Conversations with April Readings is here. How are you, lady?
Hi, Paranormal Karen.
How would you describe what you do?
I'm a psychic medium, animal communicator. I'm also clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsensory.
And Claire fun. Don't ever forget that. You're always fun. I get readings from you all the time. I call you when I'm in a pinch. What can someone who is getting their first time reading expect?
I love to start with what I call your psychic inbox, and that's where we get to see spirit messages, energetic pictures, and any information that's actually important for you to know about today that you might not even ask about. It's what brings you to the reading, and it also creates a context for the rest of your reading.
And then
you get to ask any and all specific or general questions about any area or relationship in your life, and we zoom in on that.
That's my favorite part, because you are so specific and one of the most accurate readers I've ever been to.
Thank you.
AprilReadings.com is where anyone can book a reading.
Yes.
And then at April Readings on Instagram.
Yes, definitely follow, like, and share. And my commitment is really that it's fun and that people leave energized and hopefully with a little bit of healing.
And a lot of inspiration.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, so you said Dragon School, and I know you know Jessa. We're all buddies. So when you say Dragon School, again, even like her Alien School happening at night, which maybe this is everybody's different modality or the way they do it, how does it happen? Do you see the dragons? And also, just for folks listening, clairaudient is not just hearing it outside of yourself. Like some people hear clairaudient as voices, right? Somebody talking next to them that's not seen. It can actually be inside your head or clair-knowing. And it's funny the way you're describing the information because Sonia King, the animal communicator, also animals don't communicate in words or language always. So when you go to Dragon School, what is that like?
Yeah. So instead of How to Train Your Dragon, it was How to Train Your Human because I had no idea. I knew about fairies. I knew about angels. I had this affection for dragons, but it was just kind of like an imaginary friend feeling. But this was about the oneness of the universe, the connection to all, that there's this. And it's interesting. I'm trying to think back to where my thoughts went when you said something about how we recover. And you mentioned about the jokes. This is it. Yeah. So you mentioned about the jokes where it's like 5 a day and perform. But, that's really based on this kind of patriarchal compete and produce and like just drive this human into making something. But then the dragons introduced me to the divine feminine, which is really nurturing and caring and understanding. Like I am a very, very small but significant part of a very vast ocean. And so being able to live in this place of knowing in my body and in my life and being taught by the dragons that like literally surrender and trust and be like not separate, be one, was how these teachings went on and on and on through my dreams and at night. And it was kind of like, it was Dragon School, but it was also understanding the bigger meaning and of the universe and everything. So I was even learning about cosmology and this crystal grid that I see was explained to me as there's a few different theories, but I would get the information from the dragons and then look for information that
matched.
Affirmed it, yeah. So there is a cosmologist named Jude Currivan, and she talks about the cosmic hologram. And so that information that came to me in my dreams was stuff that I had to research and understand. And when I read about the cosmic hologram based on what Jude had published just in 2018, this was all information that it's like thousands of years old. In the Hindu tradition, there's something called Nidra's net, and it's this net of crystals that we are all within and a part of, and that it vibrates. So the information isn't new, but it's between kind of the mystical side and the scientific side, and then the dragons interpreting it to me, trying to make sense of all of this and my part in it.
Now, when you say a crystal grid, is that kind of like the Matrix?
Yeah, so I've never seen that movie.
Oh. Well, the Matrix would sort of be, which by the way, it's amazing and it's right on. All the information in it. And I do research. In fact, somebody does a podcast with the great minds talking about that movie because it was very much the Matrix. I feel like is the energy field that we're probably locked in. There's a somebody I listen to named Tom Montauk. In other words, it's sort of like the Matrix is this reality that we see in front of us, but it's a kind of a hologram, and behind it, it's a system of energy balls, or I don't know. It's actually now I have to do the whole episode on it because but I think the crystal grid that you're talking about is actually it is how we manifest things, and it is how energy moves, and it is not what we see. Correct? Or am I in a different matrix?
No, you're in the same matrix. Just my not the Hollywood version, because I honestly spend a lot of time away from film and TV because it kind of
it perpetuates.
It's hard for me to figure out. Yeah. So figuring it out on my own was helpful, and although it felt kind of crazy because, again, I keep using that word, and I have a post that says self-identifying as crazy, even in mental health, is okay.
Right.
And it makes...
Yeah, your therapist got worried about you at this time, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So my therapist, when I'm trying to... And I even hired another therapist from, I think she was in New Zealand or Australia, because somebody told me that she would really get what I was going through and understand. And so my local therapist felt that perhaps I was going manic, and that I didn't really have a firm grip on my life. And my distant therapist was saying, you're just like a nut that was cracked open. And neither one of those were really helpful.
Right.
It didn't give me a lot of explanation.
I don't like that analogy of a nut that was cracked open. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. It's like, okay, now what? Do we put me back together, or do we just keep falling apart?
Right.
Yeah. So it was really kind of trial by fire, and putting a lot of trust. And I know that I'm talking about these dragons they don't exist. Nobody else sees them. I see them. Although I've talked about them, and people do when I've had conversations even with clients about their dragons. There are a few rules about dragons that I should probably share, because dragons, my belief about dragons, and a lot of this too, there are a few people that share. Diana Cooper is somebody that has done a lot of work with dragons. There's another person, I can't remember, but there are very few people that talk about dragons. But for the most part, the dragons that we hear about are very, very vicious, and we have to slay our dragons, and we have to overcome these demons within us. But my understanding about dragons is that they are our soul shepherd. They are assigned to us as our star seed, and they basically shepherd us through our journeys as we ascend and as we evolve. So every human has a dragon, and you can summon your dragon just by asking for your dragon. And then the rule about your dragon is that you must name them. And you do have to use respect. You have to be polite and say thank you and please and all that. But they're willing to serve. That's it. Dragons love humans so much that they really want us to come out of this slumber, this deep pain and trauma that we've experienced. Yes, that we've created.
That's funny too, because your guides can really, I mean, for people that may have a hard time with this visualization, because I know several guides that show up for different things, for Reiki, for, when I close my eyes and ask to see my guides, they look differently. There's no reason they can't be dragons or can't look like dragons. In fact, the Chinese, they have Year of the Dragon. Dragons are very much a part of their culture. And I don't think that's just an accident.
No, and it goes beyond that, because dragons actually exist in every culture and every religion.
That's
every single one of them. Yeah.
Really?
And there's no anthropological evidence that they ever existed. But every single story talks about, every lineage and ancestry of stories talks about dragons.
Yeah.
There's many tribes in Africa that talk about dragons and dragon medicine. There's, the castles and the dragons and the princesses and the Celtic traditions of dragons. And like, it's everywhere. And even your listeners, as soon as they have heard this, my assumption is that they will tune into it and see it everywhere. It is.
Yeah.
And it's for us, my belief, again, is it's for us to experience our highest and best and to be supported through that.
I love it. I love it. And I'm sure you didn't watch it, but HBO's very violent Game of Thrones was the lady had the two dragons. And I also find it interesting that the dragons are perhaps connected to the divine feminine. Is that did I pick that up right?
Yes. Yes. So they are. And so whatever happened in our history of patriarchy and the divine, what happened is that we, as the creators and the creatrix, feminine, because we create life, and dragons support that, not for just women, but for the divine feminine within all genders, is that we were then so powerful as the feminine that we were diminished. And I believe that's what happened with the dragons because of their power and their power to heal and their power to unite and their power to create. And that the same that the feminine within all of us is that creator. And because that is hard to manage, when we're trying to rule and live in fear, we just have to create more fear so that people create less truth. And
it's interesting with the divine feminine and this is a weird thing for me. There's two looks. There's one that I love and one that I hate. I love it when a woman is all done up and is wearing a man's tuxedo, almost like she's mocking it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And there's also, I hate the woman's suit coat, which looks like it was a derivative of a man's. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I'm not being clear, but I always think there's a woman's business coat is just a man's coat with darts. And it always makes me, I don't know why, but I have always hated that. And I believe the only thing that feminism has ruined is the apron, because the apron became like this bad thing. But I find that it's very interesting because as you're saying this, and even the talking about the nurturing part, I keep thinking, where are we going? And what parts of the world did I buy into? Especially as a female comedian. You have to take that gruff, I'm too loud, I'm too this, I'm too that, sort of to break people into. It's very hard to go up, and I'm just learning this now, to just be like, hey, this is cool. And people connect humor to the patriarchy, not to the feminine. But anyways, that was my offshoot. But I find this great that something so powerful, or thought to be so powerful and sort of mystical as a dragon, is feminine.
Yeah, that's my belief. Kuan Yin is she's the head of all the dragons. She's the guardian of the dragons. And there's an interesting story. There's a couple different versions of the Kuan Yin story. And the one that resonates with me is when Kuan Yin was a bodhisattva, she was a man and made a choice to be feminine and female when she became enlightened. And I think that switch is a lot of what's happening in our culture. And the question that you asked earlier is where we're going. And my belief is in that that there is no separation, that there is no often we've kind of identified in this as a feminist or as and this patriarchy construct that we've mapped our lives onto. But really, like, breaking all of that down, the gender isn't who we are. These beautiful spiritual beings that happen to embody a gender is something that we have to overcome.
Right. And the next generation seems to be a lot more fluid with that. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And in my dragon school training, we traveled through different dimensions. And as the dimensions become like more fluid, really, what it feels to me is that we're going back to the womb. Like we, at some point, are just floating in amniotic fluid as a very tiny genetic code of the divine.
Wow. And okay, so next we're going to get to dimension traveling and then how you help other people before I take this break. But, it's so funny because I was thinking, I always think there isn't a timeline. So when I was in yoga today, I had these odd thoughts, which oddly enough fit right into this conversation. But I have a lot of people make fun of millennials and the next generations that are coming up because they're different. And of course, different scares everyone. But one of the things is, I don't know if it was an article about they're not having sex as much or they're not coupling up or they're sort of being more independent. And it was this like alarm, alarm, alarm. And I was like, number one, comics do this too. They're too PC. They're going to find their own way. We don't need to force our way on them. They're going to find their own way. But the way they were talking about the way that the millennials and the next generation are doing relationships, I was like, oh, really? So they might be basing love on who the person is and not what they look like? Alarm, alarm, alarm. That's not a terrible thing, people. So let me take a break and then we're going to come out, talk about interdimensional travel and how you can help those of you those of the listeners that are glued to this going, wait, I want some of this. Okay, hold on. We'll be right back.
Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, aha, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the intuitive coaching package. And there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it. We'll get on a call and you can learn more about this program, and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
terryhuberman.com, TerrieHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks.
Okay, so tell me when is it a out of body thing? Is it because I love the vibrational and hearing the plants, and also I bet when you get out in nature, another big thing that might be missing is Wi-Fi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's that technical aspect of electromagnetic energy that we have put on the planet. That's why I think people are going to be getting back to nature, because they don't understand that how underlyingly invasive that is. So when you travel interdimensionally, what does that look like or feel like, or what is that?
Okay. Can I touch on something just before we go there?
No, of course you can.
Please. Okay. Yes. So being in nature, you mentioned Wi-Fi, but so I do think that the internet and Wi-Fi is a metaphor. It's a deep metaphor. The way that I have connected to the trees, and at some point, like this web, really, this crystal grid and this vibrational web that we are all held within and a part of, is how my brain, it's mapping onto these trees. And so I'm in the trees. The trees are very loving. They're very maternal. They've kept me really safe, and they've also taught me a lot. But recently the trees are like, look down, look down, look down. And I don't know what they're talking about. So I look down, And as soon as I look down, I am captured by all of this mushrooms, like fungus. And this mycelium of the mushrooms it covers the planet, and it communicates with itself and the planet all over the planet, like instantaneously through vibration.
I absolutely think you're talking about the Matrix is a different word for what you're talking about. My friend Natalie that had the near-death experience. Yes. Okay. I think we're all talking about the same thing with a different name. That's amazing. It looks like mushrooms. She saw green balls, like balls of energy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like but it's everywhere. Like
right.
We're not separate from it. So even to saying like we're disconnecting from Wi-Fi and we are so disconnected from ourselves, but we're more connected as humans, even if it's the, like I said earlier, this metaphor of connection and being a part of something greater that we can't see.
Right.
So that's what nature has taught me. And that's where I really am able to tune into this matrix that you're mentioning. So the interdimensional travel, which is where I go with the dragons, oftentimes, and because of my human experience being a little bit confusing, the friendships that I thought were solid and real kind of fell away. My relationship with my now husband, I was recently married last year. It was something that I think supported my emergence, this spiritual existential awakening, because I think that we even though you mentioned earlier too, this is a wrapping up a lot of what we've talked about, but even the millennials talking about the coupling and the relationships and how they see it and how we see it. I do think that we do have to couple. We have to come together with something or someone to heal the planet. And to be safe enough to heal that. And if it is being held by these spiritual beings or being held by a belief and faith that we'll be able to get through it. But in my case, it was my partner, this man that arrived in my life that was as strong and as powerful as me, which in the past was challenging because I wanted to be controlling in relationships. I had a strong tendency for codependence, which is my own healing and my own trauma from past relationships. So having this new, fresh connection with this human person that loved me so deeply, let me explore the depths of me.
So that would be twin souls.
Yeah. So I don't know that twin flames.
Oh, twin flames.
Yeah. I've heard that. And in some ways, it confuses me because between twin flames and soulmates, there's some confusion, and I don't know enough about it to really.
I think I have the definition, and this is much more Jessa's area. Soulmates are people we have had relationships with, past lives with, so there's some karma, and we can work out something. Twin souls are when there was one energy and it split in two, and so and it could be like in your case. Your husband was the male part of that energy and you were the female part of that energy. So when you two come together, it can be very button pushy, but it is very different. It is very different than I hear people talk about the love of their life or this and that, and it's not the same. A twin flame, almost it sounds like what you're talking about, which is it's almost a healing thing. It's where you do become one.
Yeah.
And it can be an animal too. It doesn't have to be a person, I think.
Yeah, no. I think we just needed a reflection of that. Like that absolute. And I don't like the word unconditional love because it implies that there's conditional love. Right. I think the language that I have experienced with the dragons and even with my husband is like it is so deep. And this actually is where it gets interesting with the dragons too, because they led me to the cosmic Christ energy. So there's the divine feminine, the cosmic Christ energy, that I understood Christ as somebody that was written about in the Bible. I did not see his role in our history as an avatar, as somebody who was here to teach us about our divinity and about our divine, the divine masculine, divine feminine. And to be honest, like, there's a lot that I've learned in learning about Jesus that has taught me about the feminine, and his partnership with Mary Magdalene. Also,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Relationship with Mary, his mother. And how that process of centuries of preparation for the arrival of this human, really just a human, to teach us how to be human.
See, I think that I have a lot of trouble because the Bible's been changed so many times by men, not men as in male, but as in humans. Humans have changed and interpreted that Bible so many ways that it's very. I love what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of good experiences with the Bible or the church, but in the earlier parts of my adulthood, I rejected it all. I thought, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in God and I don't believe in any of it because none of it served me as a child. It was all very hypocritical as far as I was concerned.
Right.
I set out to discover. So thankfully I had, and I actually think now looking back, I think that those institutional constructs are actually helpful for us to have a contrast, to create our own belief. And for people that choose not to question that, they are given a set of beliefs that may work for them just fine. But it gave me a very strong desire to find my truth.
So when you met your husband, was he just that other piece of the puzzle that made everything okay?
Yeah, it was complicated. We met online. We met on eHarmony. It's a second marriage for both of us. And it was, yes. So we met in a coffee shop on a Sunday afternoon, and he hugged me, and it was over. I was locked in. I was like, I don't care where you're going, but I'm going with you. And which felt weird because I never felt so safe and so loved by anybody, even from that moment. And so it was scary because a lot of the patterns of my relationships were based in ego and narcissism and getting our needs met and serving others and making sure everybody else is happy. And he wouldn't tolerate any of that. And so my way of being in a relationship had to really kind of be true, from the start. And I didn't know how to do that. And for the most, even with him, trusting that he didn't have ulterior motives, and just trusting and surrendering to this experience that somewhere in my body felt like it was home. So he's not spiritual in the way that I am, and we've learned, and I'm not linear, and he's an engineer. He grew up in Korea. There's many things that are very culturally and even scientifically different, the way we see the world. He was one of my greatest teachers, and my oldest daughter actually, but she's that's a different story. But
he was, it's very interesting because, and I don't know how to say this, but like you said, your spirituality is different from your husband's, but yet he lives, it's almost like it's a moral code. You can find that person and not believe the same thing spiritually. But when you have a code that you both live by, that probably is more similar than anyone knows.
Yes. And it really is, it comes down to respect, honesty, integrity, all of those things that I've never had with another human.
Wow.
So yeah. And so he has come a long way. And I think I've come a long way too, with my addiction being kind of present in my life, my whole life. I was like pretty crazy when it came to managing all kinds of things, including money and my home. And like, I kind of flew by the seat of my pants and made it work. So he really brought a lot of discipline and ideals into kind of my way of living, sort of in the ether, like ethereal, it'll just work out and just manifest more. And just, there are some practical things that my spiritual side really needed, and he brought in. And I think my spiritual practices and things gave him some great insight into non-scientific and non-linear thinking. So he is very familiar with the dragons. He has his own dragons. There's some things that I can share that are his. I can't share because they're his, but he has developed a lot of his own ways of being in the world that are new.
Interesting. So and now getting to, so that was your experience. So now you take all these things and you put them together. And how do you get this notion like people need a different way to heal? Is that kind of, did I describe that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So people need a different way to heal. And I think, especially the work with internal family systems, there's so many, and I heard you say too, the dark side, like kind of working with your shadow. And there's so many ways that we feel that we have to get rid of or banish these traumas or these pains and how we've been treated in the world. And we don't. Those are important parts of us that we can repurpose into something way more powerful when we understand that it's us and it's our greatest teacher. And it was there for us to learn our magnificence and our beauty. But that's not on our first visit.
Right. Well, you know what though? I know what you're talking about. Cause like sort of on a darker side, I kind of was like, one day I came to this conclusion that I can be a bully. And that's not like picking on someone weaker than me. That's like sometimes when I want my way, I can be a bully. Now I had to fight a health insurance company and it came in great. And sometimes you need a bully to push back on a bully, but it was even hard for me to say that word. And then it was like, okay, now that you're aware of it, you can either let it go or you have that if you need it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think that's beautiful, Karen, because really, if you live your life with integrity and you know that what is, not in a selfish or egotistical way, but what is the highest and best, that experience of you needing to push back with that corporate institution is something that is teaching you how to be powerful against that, right. But also for them, how to treat humans. Like they might not, you're one person in a million that they're having to deal with, but your pushback is something that we as a culture need to hear. Like they need to hear that from you, that it's not okay.
Right.
So
yeah.
Your lesson in being a bully is to be powerful, and you owning your power is all of us owning our power, I think, is what's going to take down the bullies and the people that are inflicting like their ideals, which are not like, this isn't a growth time. Like this isn't the way we're going with, I don't want to bring it up, but like politics.
Yeah. Right. It's got to be broken down and come back up.
Yeah. We need people like you to stand up to corporations like that so that everybody does it. And there are things that are happening right now that are awakening people because they cannot tolerate being treated this way. They cannot tolerate being lied to. They cannot tolerate injustice. And when things were just like humdrum and mediocre, everybody just put up with it.
Right. Right, you're absolutely right on that. If this hadn't been it has to be a big deal because people, and this is what I use in our country. It is a crime that people, I don't care what politics side you're on, that we can't afford health care or we can't do it. So what people say is we want socialized health care. And then when we vote for it, they go, well, not really. We weren't sure. And it goes back and forth. And you were right. It has to get this bad for anyone to go, all right, now I'm ready to change it.
Mm-hmm. And I thank your president, honestly,
for waking everybody up,
for waking up, for being so absurd that it's hard not to pay attention. And I'm one of those people that has never seen 9/11. I've seen no media. I've seen nothing of 9/11 ever. I have no image of it. Because I've actively avoided, but I do know that there are good things that are happening in this backwards way in your country that are going to get people's attention, and it is important. And I'm in Canada; we're pretty passive, but we've got our issues, and there's enough people waking up all over the world because of what's happening in the lower 48, that gives a lot of concern.
I think it is. And I think the whole world is about to go, the little guy's about to get up and go, no, I'm all done laying down and being bowled over by this. So tell me when people, we're out the hour, but we're going to go a little over, folks. I usually keep it right out, but we're going to go over an extra 5 or 10 minutes. So people come to you with their experience. Oh my God, I had a near-death experience. I had a this, I had a that, and you help them make sense of it?
Yes. Yeah. So I think everything does have, and it doesn't have to have a deep meaning, but people, when they have questions, there's reasons why they have those questions and they don't understand. And that is that time. My time in Dragon School was answering my questions that thankfully I had the insight to just stay with, where when I was seeing professionals, they weren't able to help me out with it. But so my job is really making sense of helping people make sense of their journeys. I work a lot with psychedelic integration, people that have had a lot of ceremonial journeying with ayahuasca and near-death experiences. And even a lot of my clients have been former addicts. And when they're outside of their addiction, what they, who they are and how they identify themselves. Because with these kinds of experiences, they're so profound. Oftentimes we don't have words, and it's hard to give them meaning, and or to feel safe in talking about it. There's a lot of stigma around psychedelics. There's a lot of, frankly, it's illegal. So it's not like somebody can just walk into anybody's office and start talking about their psychedelic trip.
Right. And judgment. There's a lot. That's getting better, but there's so much judgment around it.
Yeah. And I had my own, interesting backstory, which is that when I was going through this, spiritual emergence, my stepdaughter was experimenting with psychedelics, and she's very open and would share her experiences. And I thought, that's what's going on in my brain. What you're seeing, this oneness and this infinite love and this cosmic truth, I have experienced in the woods or in my dreams or with the dragons or, sitting in my meditation. So, but we also felt that they were harmful. And so learning about safe testing and being able to access ways that she could do these types of journeys safely was part of our parenting, but also it opened my eyes to the truth that these are safe, and there's many ways that people have healed so dramatically through trauma, deep trauma. So when people come to me, they come with their experiences. Oftentimes, I have a very wonderful liking for working with men. because oftentimes they haven't been taught how to connect, and they've built their lives on this beautiful construct of success, which looks good, because that's if you follow the program, you get the prize. But they don't feel it and they don't own it because they feel so disconnected from it. Mm-hmm. So those men tend to be the ones that are experimenting with ayahuasca and psilocybin and microdosing and looking for some sense of meaning and some way of connecting to themselves, because finding that, or, achieving that golden ring isn't enough.
It's funny too, because I just was listening to something on YouTube and they were talking about, it was actually a really, they had on this guy I love to listen to, and the two hosts were they thought they were so enlightened, and they just sounded like idiots talking to this guest who I just love. And no judgment there, right, Karen? But they, somebody said, and because the male issues don't get addressed, and I forget if the guy said something like, and I'm trying to fix, like, why do I have to have all this money to have my girlfriend? And then the other guy, without missing a beat, said, maybe get a new girlfriend. And I thought, or figure out why your importance is that you have to buy something for her, or you know what I mean? It was so funny how quickly they threw it on the woman instead of saying, why are you with that woman? Or I think men get that vision of success of what they're supposed to look like. The wife they're supposed to have and the car that they're supposed to drive is way heavier for men than women. At least we get called crazy and we can go off in certain areas,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't really have a platform, and I think it's coming. And even the whole idea, there's a few quotes that say, the future is female, or I think the Dalai Lama said the world is going to be changed by the Western woman. And it's not that I don't agree, but we cannot afford more separation.
Right.
We cannot afford to polarize again. I want my work to bring people together, and for there to be no difference. And maybe that's kind of Pollyanna, but it's also what I've learned in my life is true acceptance of me in this body and in this life, and all the others that are doing what they're doing to experience themselves in the way that they're experiencing themselves. There's nothing that, if we are here to experience this in cosmic terms, it's just what it is. There's
right.
So, and in the hologram, it's all exactly the way it was supposed to be because we created it.
Right. That's very interesting because it sometimes when you say it is what it is, I don't think people realize how simple that is and how we get so caught up in I should, or it's going to look like, or what's they going to say, or what am I supposed to do? All those statements, like my thing right now is to just try and flow. It's okay that I want things and I want to do things and I want to see things, but not to be so attached and just flow with everything.
Yeah, I agree. There's a book, Tosha Silver. She wrote 2 books I'm actually reading kind of simultaneously, but one's called The Change Me Prayers, and the other one is It's Not Your Money. And her premise is really like our human experience is God or the universe or whatever higher power you identify with. It's that we believe in experiencing itself through us.
Wow.
So it's kind of fun to say, okay, like, let's take this life for a test drive, because wonder what it's like. And I'm pretty sure that's kind of what we're doing. So that's what I help clients do. I just help them test drive their life and be better at it and choose a direction that gives them a sense of peace and belonging. And for the most part, the clients that I do work with are successful and happy. And sometimes I'm a bit, sweaty because I think, you've given me a lot here and I have to, sort all this stuff out in an hour. But it's my passion. And
your superpower. I love that.
It is my superpower. And okay, so one last thing before we kind of wrap up, I'll just throw this out to the audience, which is that the dragons opened the door to this experience that I started to have a direct relationship with Jesus and Mother Mary. And they said, I need to work with groups. And I was like, no, I'll build groups online and I'll have people follow me and I'll have this great following in kind of the virtual world. And, that didn't really work out well. I am not totally techie and I don't really have a lot to say. And even if I do have a lot to say, but making a video or doing some Instagram posts that is inspiring feels kind of a little bit unauthentic. So I was asked to speak and do a breathwork session for a conference. And that literally, as soon as I said yes to that, which was a group of 30 people, the dragons and Mary and Jesus were like, okay, finally, we've given you 3 warnings. We said you need to do this. And now you need to be in front of groups and you need to do more of it. So I was like, literally my heart was beating out of my chest thinking, what am I going to do? Where am I going to do this? Maybe I'll start up a organization that travels and I don't have to see these people in my grocery store if I run it, I don't want to be doing groups in my community. They're like, no, that's what you have to do. So I did a beta group of a breathwork group and it was sold out in 3 days. Wow. And the next group that I have is already filling. It's just interesting that following all of these paths and it almost feels like breadcrumbs of my life that have led to this moment. And this opening has been through those moments, through that teaching and that persistence and the listening and the surrendering and the understanding that I don't have a lot of say in this, Karen. I don't think any of us do. Right. So
we should enjoy the ride.
Yes. And if people show up to work with me as a coach, my goal is to get them to be one step ahead and to get them one step further than they were. So,
and can people all over the country call you and do sessions, or do they have to be in person?
Oh no, everywhere. So all over the world.
Wonderful.
And most of the work I do is I like to be able to spend a lot of time with people and get to know them and to get a lot. So I do packages of full day, half day, and 6 months. And that just really gives people a way of kind of digging in and not having to wrap up in an hour and come back next week. So, wow. And the work that I do is virtual or in person, or in groups, apparently in my own community. Who knew?
Well, someday I want to have you back on to talk about the breath work, because even the holotropic breathing, there's so much there.
Have you tried it?
I have not yet. I have tried ayahuasca, but I want to try the breath thing next. But I'm sure in LA there's a place I can find. I just haven't had a chance yet. But that is literally the first thing on my list for to give it a try.
Okay, well, I highly recommend it. For me, knowing the non-ordinary experiences that I've had that are most profound have been through breath. And
some of them are even psychedelic, aren't they?
Most of my experiences are not psychedelic.
Okay.
Some of them are, but most of the most profound shifts and changes and cosmic awakenings have happened in breathwork. Absolutely.
All right. We're going to talk about that again.
Yeah. And just a little plug. I do have a free download on my website. I would suggest try it.
Okay.
It's 20 minutes.
Well, that's where we were getting to. Tell everybody where they can find you, and I will have it absolutely in the notes in the bottom. But for people that are listening that want to run to Instagram or your website, what is it?
My website is Coach Kathleen Oh, OH.com, and my Instagram is Coach Kathleen Oh.
Kathleen, thank you so much. I am so glad that I met you. And I know this is just the first of many podcasts I'm going to be talking to you on. I hope you will come back again.
I would love that, Karen. You are such a pleasure. Thank you.
And then I'll tell you my dragon story.
Oh, please.
I will. Well, I think I told it on, the other thing is to cleanse my apartment, I just started to imagine that it was a dragon going around, and I named it Majestic. And every day I get up and meditate, and Majestic cleans my apartment, and we've had very little trouble.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, they love the energy they have. That's why they have the fire. And they can, one of the things on the grid, the cosmic grid, is that we have to ask dragons. They do not do anything unless we ask them to. And so if your Majestic dragon wants another job, clearing the ley lines, the grids, the cosmic grids, clearing them from is really helpful. And they're dutiful servants. They will do anything as long as you ask and say thank you.
Wow, wonderful. All right. Well, thank you, Kathleen. Hey, everybody, that's Kathleen Oh. Check out her website and stuff in the show notes. This, like I said, I may slip in 2 more podcasts, but I'm not sure, but I will see you all in January. Please leave me a review wherever you can so that helps the podcast get out there. A special thanks to Mike Flynn at Uno Rising Media. Hopefully see you on my stand-up dates out there. Sign up for my email list, and, that is it, everybody. Let's all say goodbye to 2019. All right. Have a great day.